one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alt?
Here.
Mr. Beistel?
Here.
Mr. Calero?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mrs. Love? Mr. Kolakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rose? Here. Mrs. Shipley?
Here.
Mr. Betts?
Here. Let the record show you present. Citizens' comments.
Cindy Sager, please.
Hello. My name is Cindy Sager. I live at 817 Parker Avenue, Scottsdale. My daughter Emily Sager has just finished 7th grade. I'm not here to tell you that my daughter is perfect, because she has made some poor choices, but haven't we all? However, I'm here to tell you that my daughter or any other student should not feel scared or uncomfortable to attend school. Unfortunately, that is how my daughter has felt since the 2015-16 school year due to bullying. Bullying is defined in Southmoreland's bullying policy means an intentional electronic, written, verbal, or physical act or series of acts directed at another student or students which occurs in a school setting and or outside of a school setting that is severe, persistent, or pervasive. Emily has been bullied by the same classmates since the 6th grade. It started out with comments about her appearance and starting rumors, but it got progressively worse. She wasn't only verbally bullied, she was cyberbullied and somewhat physically bullied as well. One example of this cyberbullying is when the bully posted a picture of Emily and 3 other girls from Southmoreland on her Instagram page. She wrote, "Who do you think is the ugliest? I think Emily is." There are also numerous phone calls being made pretty much daily. One time I've answered the phone and asked the girl why she was doing this to my daughter. She said, "Because your daughter is boy crazy." And I told her I didn't know if that was true or not, but that's no reason to bully her, and that she doesn't have to like Emily, but to please just leave her alone. It was then that I got the school involved. I called and spoke to the school counselor about the situation, and then I called and spoke to Mr. Masha. His response was, "We will look into it." The bullying continued. Then I called again, and this time talking to both Mr. Masha and the school counselor together. Nothing was being done to help my daughter. In fact, for the 6th grade Laurelville trip, they actually grouped the bully and Emily together. Not once throughout that school year did anyone call me or let me know what was going on or how they were going to handle the situation. The phone calls and cyberbullying continued over the summer. It's now the start of 2016-17 school year, and for some unknown reason, they put Emily and the bully in the same homeroom with their lockers right next to each other. When I called Mr. Masha and asked him why they did this, his response was, "I don't know how that happened." So he moved Emily to a different homeroom, and the locker just so happened to be right next to the bully's best friend's boyfriend. From that point, Emily was being bullied by all of them. Here's a list of some of the things they said and did to her. They would wait for her at the top of the stairs. Why they don't have cameras in the stairwells is beyond me. Calling her a slut, whore, hoe, and the C word. Yes, the C word. They threatened to bring a pocket knife to school, saying they were going to F her up. And they pushed her several times in the hallway. Needless to say, Em was a mess, both physically and emotionally. She started missing a lot of school. In fact, she missed 28 and a half days this year. And this was also affecting her grades. I phoned Mr. Masha and Mrs. Myers again, and I was told it was under investigation. I was livid and asked if they were waiting for my daughter to get beat up or even worse. I hung up and instantly called Dr. Molnar. He told me Mr. Masha was taking care of it. I asked him how Mr. Masha was taking care of it, and he said he has seen students in his office. I then told him if they don't do something for my daughter, I'd take legal action. He then got upset and said our conversation was done now that I have said that. Since then, my husband and I decided we needed to take this step further, so we scheduled an appointment to meet with Mr. Masha. My husband went over everything that has been going on. Mr. Masha told him that a thorough investigation had to be done and that he was taking copious notes. Mr. Masha also told him there was nothing he could do about the cyberbullying and advised us to contact the police if needed. However, according to the school district's cyberbullying policy, it states that bullying as defined in this policy includes cyberbullying. Since we weren't getting any satisfaction from the school, we went to the chief of police in Scottsdale in December. He handled the situation, told us that girls should not be bullying Emily anymore. However, right after school break, it all started up again. I then set up a phone conference with my husband, Mr. Mash, and Mrs. Myers. It was then, I demanded some type of plan for my daughter. I requested a teacher on the stairwell between classes, and I wanted all staff notified of the situation. And Mr. Mash and Mrs. Myers were going to add some more to the plan. They also changed Emily's homework again. 3 changes in 1 year. This plan seemed to work at first, but then it didn't last long. Number 1, the teachers were not notified. I spoke to several teachers, and they had no clue about Emily's situation. The plan states that they were notified. Number 2, the teacher stood in the stairwell for maybe 2 weeks, then stopped. In fact, the teacher actually humiliated Emily by saying, "I have to go stand on the stairwell so someone doesn't get beat up," and looks right at her. Number 3, everything was put on Emily. She was getting humiliated by the bullies for going to the principal or Miss Morris, so she stopped. The teacher stopped standing in the stairwell.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The teacher stopped standing on the stairwell. She didn't want to tell on him, so she didn't. Not once did Mr. Masher or Miss Myers check on Emily or call me or check to see that the teacher was on the stairwell. When I was asked why, he said he assumed everything was okay because he didn't hear from Emily. How could you put something like that on a 13-year-old girl? Then she was put into the same PSSA testing group as her bully. When I asked Mr. Masher why, he said to me, and I quote, "Emily wasn't in the same testing room as her." I again told him that she was, and Mrs. Myers said, and I quote, "Yes, she was." On May 17th, the bullies were calling Emily horrible names and telling her to kill herself. One of Emily's friends went home all upset and told her mom. The mother even called Mr. Mash about it. I called again for one last attempt. I asked for one thing, and that was to have a meeting with Em, my husband, and myself, along with the bully and her parents. Mr. Masha said he couldn't do that. I asked why. He stated he can't make someone come to a meeting. I wasn't asking for him to make, but even a request would have been nice. That was Emily's last day of school. She completed her work from home. In fact, May 31st was the first and only time Mr. Masha called me about Emily. The first time in 2 years. She does not want to go back to school there. If this all would have been handled when it first started, we wouldn't be where we are today. My daughter is damaged. She now goes to a Christian counselor and is trying to like herself again. Not once were there any disciplinary actions for the bullies. Em was actually made the victim. Southmoreland Middle School needs to implement their bullying cyber policy, because what good is having one if it's not implemented? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens?
That's all, sir.
Minutes?
It's recommended that the board approve the minutes for the month of May 2017, which include the May 4th budget voting meeting, the May 11 discussion meeting, and the May 18 voting meeting.
Any questions? Reports we're skipping over this evening.
Want to vote on that? I was asked to make this a voting meeting, so I gave you the option to vote on everything. So you can either vote tonight, and when we convene on the 29th, get our budget adopted and then leave, or we can discuss things tonight and then vote on the 29th. It's immaterial to me, however you would like to handle that.
I would just like to make a request that we at least vote on the checklisting,
Okay.
so that we can not hold those until the 29th, make those payments. Thank you.
I don't see why we should vote on everything.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
It was advertised, okay.
Yeah.
So you'll need a roll call, Mr. President. Or a voice vote, excuse me, a
All
motion.
those in favor of the minutes?
No.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shipley, second by Mr. Calero. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Business and finance budget.
Yeah, we had been in budget discussions, and I told you that I would come back to you with a list of possible cuts for this evening, and those are on your board docs document, but I will go through them. And you can tell me if there are any that you do not want implemented, or if you accept the cuts as they are recommended, and then we will vote, and then we will adjust the proposed budget accordingly. Item number 1 was not replacing an elementary school retiring teacher through attrition. That would be a total savings of approximately $86,068. An administrative secretary not being replaced, that would be a total approximate savings of $66,555. Cutting back on athletic security by about 50%. Many of those events may have been overstaffed. That would be about $9,150. Reduce various maintenance supplies and initiative, $15,000. Eliminate repairs to the SPC gymnasium floor, $6,750. We have lease a van instead of buying a van for a savings of $31,000. I would like to leave that as it is as a proposal. But Mr. Swink is looking into eliminating that run entirely, and if we do not eliminating it, using rooms for that run, and the savings would still be about $31,000. If we eliminate the run in its entirety, it will be even a little bit greater than that. I'm cutting back on secretaries a little bit, substitutes that is, at SPC $1,744, at SES $3,488, the middle school $2,326, and the high school $4,651. We reduced our estimate for real estate appraisal services by $3,500. We reduced our estimate for outside legal services by $5,000, and our estimate by solicitor services in the same amount. Cutting our CSIU, that's our database and student management system service call estimate by $2,800. Further cuts from business office supplies, $355. We adjusted copier expenses by downgrading the superintendent's office copier by $5,000. We eliminated the purchase of new housekeeping equipment, $3,092. We eliminated purchasing a new fob system and lobby flooring in this complex, $19,150. Reducing speech and language supplies to fit the actual needs, $5,000. Eliminating the child development field trip, $500. Some things that were included in the musical budget that we were able to cut out of other accounts, $1,500 out of the drama and school play, and another $1,500 out of stage supplies. The future is Mind Club dues. That would come from a grant, so that's a $2,000 reduction. Reducing learning support supplies by $1,000, and assuming that a retirement is accepted a little later in the meeting, a savings of $99,200. Gifted supplies were reduced by $250. Those cuts total $381,580. In working with Lynn in terms of cleaning the cafeteria and billing in terms of indirect cost, that would be a flow from the food service fiduciary account into the general fund in the amount of $14,400 for a total reduction in the proposed budget of $395,980. There may be a little bit more than that. I'll have a motion for you a little bit later on that may add about another $20,000 to that. So we would entertain a motion to accept any or all of those cuts with or without any additions that you may choose to make.
Jack, one question. One of the things that's on there is to reduce trying to find it again, on the van. I guess it was maintenance on the van. It was one of the items that was on there. I'm assuming that if we either lease a van, I'm assuming it was that on the basis that we would have 2 older vans. Is that what that figure was based on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there could be additional savings there. We just don't know what they might be because we're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, and we tried to,
Right.
you know, when you have older vans, you try
Right.
not to under budget for those items,
Right.
obviously, because
It's fine.
you don't
Yeah,
want to get caught with
that's good.
dead transmission or something that you
Sure.
don't have money to pay for.
Okay.
Good question there. Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Roll?
After these cuts, what does that leave our deficit at?
Mr. Marnell, what's our current deficit?
That would bring it down to approximately $1,789,528.
About 1.7 million.
And we're using our fund balance to pay this?
That's what's budgeted, yes, and obviously we'll, as we always do, try to be as frugal as we can, and at the end of the year, spend a little bit less than we anticipated, or a lot less perhaps.
In regards to the budget and business that we need to handle for the new year, I received today the insurance renewal summary from Mr. DeFiorio, our insurance broker. The front page is the summary of all the insurance coverages that we purchased, the cost this year, and the renewal cost for the new school year. The net difference is a savings of $7, which in light of current markets and of course consumer price indexes, I think that is remarkable. We're also, on the second page, we're going to get a refund, or they may apply this credit against our renewal. They're probably going to have to issue a refund check. It's probably required by insurance law, but we keep a close tab on our insurable values, and I'm constantly working on that to keep it up to date so that we have the proper insurance coverages in place. They insured us for this current year, the expiring year, with a little more property coverage than we actually had. Once we got our updated industrial appraisal property valuation, so we're getting a refund of $2,427. So if we took that off of this year's premiums that we paid, so the net difference for next year is actually $2,434 in savings. So I just wanted to communicate it. I'd like this to be a walk-on item. I'd like you to approve renewing our insurance packages rather than waiting until June 29th. These were scheduled to be approved at the meeting that was scheduled for June 15th, our normal voting meeting. Since we've eliminated that meeting and made that meeting on June 29th, if you would not mind approving this tonight, then I communicate that with Mr. DeFiorio tomorrow morning so that we can proceed with locking in our renewals. Is that okay?
Need a motion for that? Motion by Mr. Calero.
Second.
Second by Mr. Weissel. Any questions?
All in favor?
Yeah, Mike, I have one.
Mr. Hall?
Have we ever shipped this out for quotes?
Well, we do, and
When was the last time we did that?
the value of having an insurance broker is that the broker, like Mr. DeFiorio, has access to different insurance companies as opposed to an insurance agent that is, let's say, fixed with one company. So, yes, we do ship this out. Now, we did not ship it out for this renewal, and we did not do that because we had done it last year. And the one thing that insurance companies do not like doing is giving out quotes and then not getting business. So we did it last year. We found that staying through the PSBA program was more beneficial. Now the one package that we have moved more readily or aggressively is the workers' comp package. You may recall from prior years' renewal discussions. We used to be with the Pennsylvania School Claims Service, and then for the 14-15 year, we got an excellent quote from Highmark Casualty, and then for 15-16, UPMC Work Partners undercut them, which is what we like to see, aggressiveness in that part of the market. UPMC again last year for the current 16-17 school year. Again, beat out not only Highmark, but also, I think it was Ohio Casualty. And then I told Mr. DeFiorio, I said, since we're experiencing, again, the school year's not over, but we've been experiencing, again, very low, very small volume of workers' comp claims, not to go out and test the markets again, because, I don't want companies like Highmark or Ohio Casualty or the other companies that he has touched base with to shy away in the future when we decide to look at that again. But
If you look at the line item for workers' comp, it did go up, less than $3,000, about so the UPMC did go up, but one notation that Mr. DeFury put on there, if you look at 15-16 at the bottom there, we were at 74,000. So UPMC was very aggressive to keep us for 16-17, lowered it to 57,000. Now there's a slight bump in 60, and that's I think very normal because payroll dollars are projected to go up in total. And a chunk of this premium calculation is based on your payroll dollars. So considering where we were, and at one point we were over $100,000 in workers' comp premium. So, and I thought when I was looking at this before walking down the hallway, I thought I'm going to get together with Mr. DeFury and write down more of the past history on this sheet, and I can share it with you. I do like to see that we keep this package very comparable from year to year, and if not, achieve some savings as we go along. So, yeah, long story short, yes, we do test the markets through our broker.
Thank you, Jim.
Can I piggyback on one question on that, Jim? When you and I can certainly appreciate not keeping going out and asking for quotes and then not taking them. What is the normal course of rebidding these things? Is it a year, 2 years, 3 years? From your experience, how often do you go out there and test the market?
In my career, only one time did I do it, a bid on my own. And that's because we didn't have a district designated insurance broker. And I must say that was a lot of work. But it paid off because we saved big. The insurance broker who won the package, and this was for the 91-92 renewal, was from down in Connellsville. His name was Dave Garland. And then I had the school board appoint Dave as the insurance broker to do that work for me. So 2 years later, then he went out, retested the markets, and we changed companies. And then again, 2 years later, he retested the markets, and we changed companies. And then we ended up with the PSBA Insurance Trust. And I was very glad that we finally moved into that arena because they know schools best. And they have been very, very price conscious. And the insurance trust themselves actually goes out and puts together these packages. So as a whole, they insure over 400 types of school entities, districts, IUs, vocational technical schools. And they do a lot of this brokering for us. But I also told Mr. DeFury the last couple of years, we have looked at segments of this package, especially workers' comp, and we've looked at some of the other segments like the school leaders, legal liability, and general liability. But we've not been able to find a company that is better pricing with any of these than school claims. But we have gotten quotes just to make sure that the numbers we get from PSBA are good numbers. But again, I don't want any of these companies out there to then turn around and shy away that, sorry, we've given you a quote every year and we've not gotten the business and we're not going to give a quote again. One thing I found out back in the winter of 91-92 is that insurance companies will only give out one quote. So when I put the bid out myself, insurance brokers and agents were calling me saying, well, they were blocked out of this company or they were blocked out of that company because this insurance agent got to that insurance company first. The insurance companies will only give out one quote for a company. So if 5 agents goes to Ohio Casualty or Commercial Union or Unum or whoever's out there, Cincinnati, they'll only give out one quote. Who's first in the door, they will give the quote to. So I had agents calling me, crying in the blues like, hey, Bob blocked me out of Commercial or Dave blocked me out of Ohio Casualty. So working with a broker is the best way to go. You find a good broker, try to stick with them, and I think we can continue to do good things. If not get great savings all the time like we have in workers' comp, at least keep the package in line. So I'm very happy with this. I hope you are too.
Thanks, Jim.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Hi, guys. I'm going to make an analogy of this in the second part of my talking here tonight, but again, this is a perfect example of the point I've been trying to get across to you guys for years. So here we are talking about all the finances of healthcare, but we aren't talking about the quality of the healthcare, and that's just what I want to point out tonight. Healthcare in America is the leading cause of death and illness. We have pharmaceuticals that are making tons of money on things that are unproven. Everyone can understand that controversy. What your approach to healthcare is doing is blocking the alternative people to come in. It's giving us the standard American diet. You can deny the science. You can pick what you want to pick on that, but I guess you could just, instead of looking at students and saying, hey, they got great scores, we're successful, and you could look at these people that are on your healthcare systems, yourselves, our community, and say, are we healthy? And again, if you look historically and globally, we're one of the most unhealthy countries in the world, and I could go on and on about that. That's sort of an area that I think about a lot. But when you're dealing with children and you're taking away and you're giving them early diabetes and early heart disease, and putting them on the path to their life expectancy is lower than they were if they were born 20 years ago. That's not an option that you have to just do your opinion. You have to open up and say, listen, what's your point here? Otherwise, you're just following the dictates of the industry, and you know that these people in Washington and all are corrupted. Yes?
If I may interject with Jan here.
Yeah.
Jan, none of these insurances on here involve health insurance.
Well, you were saying UPMC and Highmark. I was going to ask that.
That's the workers' compensation side of it.
Well,
when a worker gets injured on the job.
I heard that.
Yeah, it's separate from health insurance. I just wanted to.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify.
All right, that was a mild understanding. I think my point carries because, again, when you get on the...
So if it doesn't have anything to do with this particular item, then we need to move on.
No, it does. And now you can start the clock again. When you go in for that compensation, you're going into the medical system. Why are you going into that compensation? Because you're injured in the first place, because you're overweight, because you're not eating right, because you don't have the right mineral balance in your
Roll
body,
call.
and on and
Mr.
on.
Oak?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Do we
Can
want
you
to...
just back up to the budget?
That was good.
I just want to add that workers' compensation is a state law, that we have to provide workers' comp coverage on our work. Anybody who works anywhere has work comp coverage. So I agree with a lot of your comments that you make. You're right, but I just wanted to clarify that.
I understand.
Regarding the budget, I have one of the items that I keep touch on with our bond underwriters is when our bond issues may come up for refunding. 2012 is now eligible for refunding, 2012 bond issue. Now again, the quick numbers that Chris Shelby gave me today, again, is just estimated, and it's based on today's bond market interest rates. Again, you don't know the exact rate you'll get until you go through the whole process of refunding bonds, but there is, based on today's numbers, an approximate savings of $120,000. Now I asked Mr. Shelby to look at if we proceed with this in the coming months, and it's a run-out process of 3 or so months to put this whole package together. You have to involve your bond counsel, so on and so forth, but we do have a bump in debt service facing us for the 18-19 fiscal year of about $181,000. So I asked Mr. Shelby to talk to me tomorrow regarding if we can some way restructure this refunding to minimize, put this savings against the 18-19 debt service to try to smooth out that bump because, you know, that bump, if not smoothed out, will face us when we're, you know, sitting here next year trying to pass a budget. So, I mean, that's good news that this issue qualifies, that rates have improved since last year when we first started talking about this. I just wanted to update you on that. No effect on the budget we're trying to pass now because I would not advise you to budget in a potential savings of $120,000 if it would not be realized due to something happening out there in the global market, specifically municipal bond markets. So, just that little piece as we're talking about budgets. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
So to back up to the cuts that were presented by the superintendent, are there any there that you want to think about, or do you want to vote on the whole package tonight so that they have guidance for the budget purposes? We can vote on the whole thing as is, or we can pull out some that you want to think about, and then just vote on the rest of the package.
You want to vote on it all, and if it doesn't pass, then we can talk about what we want to take on.
Do we have a motion to vote on all of it?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second by Mrs. Shipley. Questions? Since it's a non-agenda item,
It is an agenda item, Mike.
oh, I'm sorry, this last meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Let me read the motion. It's recommended that the board authorize administration to reduce anticipated expenditures for the 2017-18 budget in the amount of $381,580 and an increase in revenues of $14,440 per the attached spreadsheet, resulting in a decrease in the anticipated deficit of $396,020.
And we have a motion by Mrs. Rhodes and a second by Mrs. Shipley. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Over a $2 million deficit. We've cut 20%. This cuts are woefully short of what we need to be doing. No.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 7, 1, and 1 absent. Old business, seeing none. New business, Slippery Rock.
Treasurer's report. It's recommended that the board approve the May 2017 Treasurer's report and the May 2017 bill summary report.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shipley, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fry. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with 1 absent. Old business, seeing none. New business, Slippery Rock University.
It's recommended that the board approve an affiliation agreement between Slippery Rock University and the Southmoreland School District to participate in the student teaching program for qualified Slippery Rock students in the teaching field.
Need a motion, please? Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Shipley. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with 1 absent. The Meadows Universal Community Behavioral Health.
It's recommended that the board approve the letter of agreement with the Meadows for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 school years to provide educational services in the event a student is hospitalized at that facility at a cost of $65 per day for the services provided Monday through Friday by a certified Pennsylvania teacher.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shipley, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fry. Questions? Roll
By way of clarification, the Meadows is in the central part of the state. The only time we would have a student there is if someone were adjudicated to a facility in the central part of the state and would subsequently have mental health issues that would cause the student to be hospitalized. We've had this articulation agreement with them for probably 6 years now and have never used them yet, but it needs to be in place.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Chestnut Ridge Counseling.
It's recommended that the board authorize administration to continue services for the 2017-18 school year with Chestnut Ridge Counseling Services Incorporated to provide continued services through New Directions at a cost for a regular education student of $80.50 per day and a rate of $88.50 per day for those students designated as itinerant, supplemental, and full-time special education students.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Calero, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Letter of agreement.
It's recommended that the board approve the letter of agreement between Westmoreland Case Management and Supports and the Southmoreland School District for the provision of student assistant program services at no cost to the district.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shipley, second by Mr. Beistel. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Need a motion to recess for executive session for personnel. Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second. Second by Mr. Beistel. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0.
Up here, reports.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Personnel, half-time developmental reading teacher.
It's recommended that the board create the position of half-time developmental reading teacher at Southmoreland Middle School pursuant to the curriculum changes that were approved at the May 4th, 2017 meeting.
Need a motion, please?
So be it.
Motion by Mr. Beistel, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Van driver.
It's recommended that the board, with regrets, accept the resignation of Mr. David Mates as van driver effective immediately.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Calero, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beistel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Resignation of assistant high school softball coach.
It is recommended that the board accept with regrets the resignation of Mr. Wes Nicholson as an assistant high school softball coach and authorize the administration to post and advertise the position.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fry, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beistel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Retirement of elementary principal.
It is recommended that the board accept with regrets the resignation of elementary principal Mr. John L. Lee Jr. for the purpose of retirement according to the terms and conditions of the Special Early Retirement Package of 2017, a copy of which is attached to the agenda. Mr. Lee has served the Southmoreland School District as a principal for 26 and a half years and serves the district in a number of other capacities. He's the voice of the Southmoreland Band. He's the MC at the parade. John is one of the faces of Southmoreland. 26 and a half years of service, John. Congratulations and thank you.
Need a motion, please? Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Calero. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes, and I'd like to publicly myself thank Mr. Lee for all these years of service. My children sons had gone through the elementary, and I can't say enough for you, Mr. Lee, so thank you again publicly. Yes.
Mrs. Shipley?
Yes, and I'd just like to say, Mr. Lee, I was on the board that hired you, and I feel we made a good choice back then.
Mr. Alt?
Thank you, John. Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes, with regret.
Mr. Calero?
Yes, John, thank you very much.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Lee, for all your service to education. Motion passes 8-0. Reduction of hours.
It's recommended that the board authorize administration to decrease custodial hours by 20 hours per week at a location or locations to be determined by administration.
So be it.
Motion by Mr. Beistel, second. Second. Second by Mr. Polakowski. Roll call, please.
Mr. Polakowski? Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Shipley?
Yes,
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Food service worker.
It's recommended that the board accept the intention of Kathy Perky to step down from her position as head cook and place Mrs. Perky into a position that will allow her to retain her insurance benefits at the contracted percentage for the 2017-18 school year.
Need a motion, please?
so moved.
Motion by Mr. Shipley, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Calero. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Shipley?
Yes,
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
No.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 7-1 with one absent. School play sponsors.
It's recommended that the board open the positions of school play sponsors and authorize administration to post and advertise the positions.
Need a motion, please?
so moved.
Motion by Mrs. Shipley, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Shipley?
Yes,
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Citizens' comments?
I apologize if I seem to be monopolizing the podium, but that's what public meetings can do sometimes. Before I start, I'd like to comment on Mr. Lee. For me, as someone in the community, he was the face of Southmoreland in the community for me for a long time, and I can still remember Grandma Ross and the work he did so long ago with the Thanksgiving meals for the poor. And that interaction with the community is, really great. And when it happens, I see it from the community side. I'd like to just point out that the chair was walking a fine line when I was speaking to the agenda item. We'll listen to the recording and I'll make a second decision on that. But it's tough to come up here and get taken off the podium again and again and again. And the previous person was given extra time as much as I empathized with her. I'm going to point that out and I'll be back to comment on that again. So guys, I'm going to drive it home and I'm going to try to reverse it and do it a little bit differently, but pick up right where I was left off. I want to progress on the cafeteria discussion that you had at the last meeting. It was a perfect example of operation flaws in my mind considered to be normal. You went through the routine. We're better than the school district next door. We're better than the school district on our finances. We give them an extra cup of berries or whatever. But we're getting past the big picture. The big picture is we're giving these students the standard American diet. We know the youth health is dropping in America, and so I'm not going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to switch it around a little bit, and I'm going to ask, since we have some experts here, we have Mr. Fry, who's in the meat industry, and we have our cafeteria person. I'm just going to put him on the spot. So I would like you to give me a study, and I'll give you my email, and show me a study where people went on a meat diet and they reduced their heart disease and intestinal diseases where their blood came up. I'll give you hundreds of studies, and I will produce them, where going off the meat diet was beneficial. So you just give me one, because this is my field, and I don't think you're going to do it. But hey, we got two experts here. One's paid, one's a policy maker. They can come up and answer the call. And if you're people like Mr. Beistel who think that, well, I ate meat my whole life, my grandma did, my kids do, that's not your privilege to have your opinion and your culture and your tradition dictate policy for their children. Your responsibility is to look at the signs and answer questions like I just posed to your colleague over there. And I just picked meat out because we have a member here who's in that business, and it could be any other thing in the diet of the what you're giving the kids, and it could go on into the health care that we're spending so much on. It could go into the curriculum and on and on. So let's just reverse it now and focus it down, and I'll wait for your response, because this is your field. And remember, policymakers who are working for voiceless children don't have the luxury to ignore signs. They don't have the luxury just to say, well, that's what we're told to do by the state, by the feds, and by that, because, come on, those elected officials are put in there by big donations. Those big donations are primarily coming from the vested interests. The meat lobby, the dairy lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, all these things are controlling our government. Maybe you trust them all. Maybe that's where you're going to go. But don't you have it in you to stand up one time, one place, and question authority, to exercise some critical thinking? Show me an example where you're doing that. All I see here, year in and year out, I've been a faithful follower of this board, this is what they're telling us to do. They give you the cafeteria lady the hoops to jump through. She jumps through them. She gets applause. But look at what the students are getting. The food is 1/10 as nutritious as it was 50 years ago. They don't count that. They don't count the antibiotics in the meat. So again, I'm not going to keep going broad and broad, because that doesn't get anywhere with you guys. If I don't get an answer back with the two experts that you have, then we'll take the debate and the discussion from that point. And I'll turn my email in before I leave. Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Anything from any board members? Mr. Earl?
Mike, I just take 1 minute. I would like to acknowledge and thank some people. A group of about 36 VOTEC kids had an opportunity to go to D.C. for a tour of D.C. and including the White House. They were not able to get financing or funding from the VOTEC, but some people stepped up and made the trip possible for all of them. And like I said, there's a picture of them all in D.C. And I would like to thank those people. 6 vans were rented, and all transportation costs were paid for by Attorney Kiefer and Dr. Fike. And as for the drivers of the vans, they were the teachers at the VOTEC who volunteered their time to be the van drivers, and they also, those same teachers collected money amongst themselves to provide a hot buffet for those kids. And that's all I have. I thank all those people for what they did for those kids.
Anyone else with anything? Motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Beistel, second by Mrs. Rhodes. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Good night.